Hello and welcome to chapter 20, and don't be alarmed by the lack of annotations. They should appear now. Here they are. For some reason they just did that. That was a bit odd. But anyway, let's have a look. Let's say annotations, highlights actually. But we have Jonathan Harker doing more of his detective work. They're trying to track down, well I say they, and he is trying to track down where the boxes of earth has gone. And it opens with he's trying to track down Thomas Snelling. And unfortunately, he's a bit of a boozer because the very prospect of beer which my expected coming had opened to him had proved too much. He had begun too early on his expected debauch. So unfortunately, he's drunk. His expected debauch is a really nice phrase I think maybe we should bring back. I like that one. But there's some context here about middle class attitudes towards the working class here as well, and he's a bad one because he's a boozer, he's a drinker. And this is a bit patronising here as well because we have alternatively he visits Mr. Joseph Smollett, who's much more respectable and just drinks tea. He's not completely drunk, and he's got a wonderful dog's-eared notebook, which just seems a bit patronising really, but anyway. Charming working class, salt of the earth fellow that he is. And we have more of Stoker's admittedly fairly dubious attempts at replicating cockney dialect. Well, governor, you've treated me very handsome. I'd given him half a sovereign. It's quite a lot of money though. And I'll tell you all I know. I heard a man by the name of Bloxham say 4 nights ago here in the Ear and Hands in Pincher's Alley, and that's how he and his mate had a rare dusty job in an old house at Perfect. I think it's going to be Purfleet. But anyway, it's all very stereotypical. But again, you can go into more detail with like elision there. Look at that. Or G dropping, that's also known as. But you got, dialect auxiliary verbs there. And it's kind of written phonetically as well. Also, there is a term to describe this as I dialect, which is a really weird term, but I as in eyes you see with, and I dash dialect, and that is when a writer writes effectively phonetically, so it looks like to the eye what the dialect actually is. But it's artificial really, it's not actually very accurate. It's just to give an impression of Cockney dialect. And I highlighted this because it's another technology instance here where the British Post Service was the first one in the world, and it's why you don't have to have the country's name written on British stamps, because Britain is the country that invented that kind of postal service. So I think there's a sense of pride here coming through, and the efficiency of the modern for the time post office. And when he gets his letter come through, it's a dirty scrap of paper. Oh, these commoners have no idea how to write proper letters. It was written with a carpenter's pencil in a sprawling hand. Sam Bloxham, Corcoran's 4, Potter's Court, Bartle Street, Walworth. Ask for the depite. But we'll come back to that bit in a minute. That's all I dialect stuff. And when he goes... First of all, Harker can't find the right place because Potter's been spelled incorrectly. It's Potter's Court, but he put Potter's. Oh, these working class types, they can't even spell correctly. There's a bit of that going on here. So social class, attitudes and values. And it turns out, hold on to your sides, it wasn't Depite. When he says, where's Depite? There's no one here of that name. There ain't nobody of that kind living here or anywheres. It's a bit Mary Poppins, really, isn't it? But it's, I'm the deputy. As in the deputy? Oh, how amusing. I was on the right track. Phonetic spelling had again misled me. Half-crown tip. It's quite expensive for old Harker there, isn't it, to be giving out all this money. More modern technology, a new cold storage building, like a type of warehouse, newfangled warehouse that again, we take this kind of thing for granted, but of course in those days that would be a refrigerated cold storage unit. That is pretty advanced, actually. I don't think it's quite the same as a modern refrigerator, but it's a precursor. But they would be able to store things at sub-zero temperatures, and new technology for the time. And then adding to the mystery, there's intrigue here, because when he's recounting the delivery, he has cursed me, but he was the strongest chap I ever struck, and him a old fellow with a white moustache, one that thin you will think he couldn't throw a shadow, as in throw a shadow. And of course, how this phrase thrilled through me. Of course, it's Dracula with his super strength, and he's on the trail of Dracula here. It's more evidence. So this is very much almost like a detective novel, detective story, this part of the novel. So Harker realises that, just a bit then, that the Count could actually do all the heavy lifting himself. So once the boxes are spread out, he's strong enough to then distribute the boxes himself, which, remember, these are his boxes of sacred earth that he can desecrate and recharge his vampiric batteries, which is my phrase for it. But he can revitalise himself with those. Pennsylvania. Did I skip a page then? No, I didn't. He brought all the way over. Okay, then we have more of Jonathan Harker's inquiries, and he tries his luck with the estate agents, Mitchell, Sons and Candy, and he asks if they can tell him who's bought a property. Pardon me, I said with equal politeness, but I have a special reason for wishing to know who purchased it. Again he paused longer and raised his eyebrows still more. It is sold, sir, was again his laconic reply. Surely, I said, you do not mind letting me know so much. But I do mind, he answered. The affairs of their clients are absolutely safe in the hands of Mitchell, Sons and Candy. This was manifestly a prig of the first water. There was no use arguing with him. I thought I'd best meet him on his own ground. So basically, Jonathan Harker has a great idea, and he can throw the weight around of his posh friend. So again, this is a lot of this chapter is social class stuff related, actually, because I act on the part of Lord Godalming, who wishes to know something of the property which was, he understood, lately for sale. These words put a different complexion on affairs. So basically, when they realise that there's an aristocrat involved trying to find out, because of the social structures of Victorian England, Mitchell, Sons and Candy, the representative here of that company, will defer, and then he does actually answer Jonathan Harker's question. I would like to oblige you if I could, Mr. Harker, and especially would I like to oblige his lordship. It would be a pleasure if we can so far deviate from our rules as to give the required information to his lordship. So we'll do it for him. I highlighted this because it amused me. It was now dark and I was tired and hungry. I got a cup of tea at the Aerated Bread Company. Sounds delicious. Of course, what do you like to have with a cup of tea? A nice bit of aerated bread. Maybe it was a real treat. So when we have... I just don't know. Anyway, Jonathan Harker... Sorry, keep changing pages there. When Jonathan Harker returns, home, Mina was looking tired and pale. Come on, Jonathan, come on. Work it out. And also there's a change in her personality because she's a little bit more fruity than she was. Or, as Jonathan Harker says, she was more affectionate. The dear girl was more affectionate with me than ever and clung to me as though she would detain me. So, obviously, the effects of Dracula changing her personality, similar to how we saw with Lucy earlier on as well. So we've had his detective work, and they're narrowing down their search for Dracula. And we have Mina when she's asleep. Her forehead is puckered up into little wrinkles as though she thinks even in her sleep. Another reference to her intelligence there. And I suppose also physiognomy as well, which we've mentioned before as a theme. She's still too pale, but does not look so haggard as she did this morning. It's probably because it's night time. She's probably got a little bit more energy at this point because of she's slowly turning into a vampire. Come on, Jonathan, wake up. He is awake. And we have a reference here to Twelfth Night. Look, such a smile as would have become the face of Malvolio. This is Dr. Seward when he goes to see Renfield again. as in an insincere smile that wouldn't really fit the character, in this case of Renfield. And he discusses, there's a reference here to Psyche, which manifested as a butterfly, talking about the flies. The fly, my dear sir, is one striking feature. Its wings are typical of the aerial powers of the psychic faculties. The ancients did well when they typified the soul as a butterfly. So that's talking about Psyche. Anyway. Then, again, I suppose that links to what happened in the last chapter with the clear intelligence and philosophical knowledge and classical knowledge of Renfield. So he's a cut above your average lunatic, as is depicted here. Oh, no, I want no souls. Life is all I want. So the language that Stoker gives him mimics Dracula, actually, like the blood is the life and everything. He said that before, hasn't he? So you can see there's vampiric tendencies, even though Renfield isn't actually converted into a vampire, though. He would like to be, wouldn't he, really? Then there's discussion of the Bible, more biblical references as well. So this reference is particularly interesting because the Book of Enoch is what's known as an apocryphal book of the Bible. It's not one that's considered to be part of the main biblical canon. So there's some extra books of the Bible which aren't included in normal Bibles, and this is one of them, Book of Enoch. And where it's relevant here is because it actually includes a discussion about demons. So I think, again, that must link to Dracula, mustn't it, really, there? And also, like, the fall from heaven and angels and things. There's loads of that kind of aspect of religion in there. Then Dr. Seward, this was said with a leer of inexpressible cunning, I know that I shall never lack the means of life. So perhaps Dracula has promised him a life as a vampire, or unlife as a vampire. And that's how he manipulates him and how he works for Dracula because of that. You like life and you want life. So that's mainly more Renfield stuff there. And he's not really that interested in flies, but this is also interesting as well about drink. He stopped at the word drink. He goes, blow spiders. What's the use of spiders? There isn't anything in them to eat. Or he stopped suddenly as though reminded of a forbidden topic. So, I thought to myself, this is the second time he has suddenly stopped at the word drink. What does it mean? Blood, you nana. Then we have, I don't take any stock at all in such matters. Rats and mice and small deer, as Shakespeare has it, chicken feed of the larder, they might be called. I'm past all that sort of nonsense. You might as well ask a man to eat molecules with a pair of chopsticks. That's a bit of hyperbole there, as to try to interest me about the lesser carnivora when I know of what is before me. So we have there alluding to and foreshadowing again the arrival of Dracula. Dracula is near. There's going to be suspense being built up here for the reader. There's Mina who's acting strangely. She seems to be going through the same thing that Lucy went through, but none of the other characters realise. All the while this is happening, they're closing in on Dracula's location, narrowing it down, so it's a race against time, effectively. So Stoker is really building up the suspense here. So there's a lot of things here where Seward is effectively taunting Renfield and not really understanding it. And again, it's quite drawn out, and I think it's, again, Stoker playing on dramatic irony because the reader can feel intelligent for knowing exactly what's going on here. And it's meant to add to the suspense because Renfield seems completely so slow on the Seward seems so slow on the uptake here. Then his conclusions are, several points seem to make what the American interviewer calls a story, if one can only get them in proper order. Here they are. Will not mention drinking, fears the thought of being burdened with the soul of anything, has no dread of wanting life in the future, despises the meaner forms of life altogether, though he dreads being haunted by their souls. So this is part of Seward's own deductive process. And, the penny drops. Merciful God, the Count has been to him, and there is some new scheme of terror afoot. Oh, well done, finally. Very good. So I suppose if you hadn't worked it out, then it is spelled out for you, but I think we all worked that out before, didn't we, really? Here is the letter from Mitchell, Sons and Candy to Lord Godalming, explaining about I'm doing the wrong bit, sorry. Looping the wrong bit. That bit is the bit I meant to loop. And here is the letter. I put an exclamation mark here. The purchaser is a foreign nobleman, Count de Ville, who effected the purchase himself, paying the purchase money in notes over the counter. If your lordship will pardon us using so vulgar an expression. So there's this deferential kind of language here as well. But this here is a pseudonym for, obviously, Dracula, Count de Ville. Okay, that also works as an acronym as well, doesn't it? As a suitable name for him. Bit obvious though, Dracula, isn't it? There you go. He should have called himself Dr. A. Cula. That would have been even better. Then Van Helsing, we have a reference to him, and he goes off to do some research at the British Museum, and he's looking up ancient wisdom, searching for witch and demon cures, which may be useful to us later. So we've said before about Van Helsing is an unusual scientist. He's a polymath. He knows lots of different subjects. He draws on different banks and fields of knowledge. And so here we see him actually doing it. And presumably it's another way for Stoker to kind of get the wisest, most intelligent character and the most powerful member of the heroic group out of the way, so it raises the suspense and vulnerability on Mina as well, thinking about it. And right at the end of the chapter, there's a yell from Renfield's room. The attendant came bursting into my room and told me that Renfield had somehow met with some accident. He had heard him yell, and when he went to him, he found him lying on his face on the floor, all covered with blood. I must go at once. So it ends with a bit of horror and a bit of a mystery over it as well. Who could have killed him? I think we all know who, don't we? There you go. So all that remains to be said is thank you for listening. Have a good day or night wherever you are. Like, comment, subscribe, watch my other videos. I hope you found that useful. Thank you and farewell for now.